Today we are taking a look back at this camera. It is the Sony FDR AX33 and it is released 10 years ago. It was the first consumer 4K camcorder from Sony. But how good is this camera in 2025 and is it still worth using it? Let's find out. When we look at the build quality of the AX33, it actually feels pretty well built. It has this nice strap so you can easily hold the camera for a very long period of time and it's very comfortable to use. Like you can use this for hours and it still feels comfortable. And it also has a nice manual button here on the side, which means that if you want to change settings, so for example the ISO or aperture, you can just hold the button, select a function and then you can turn the dial to change settings. So that can be zoom, focus, aperture or auto exposure shift. And the nice thing about all camcorders is that they have this nice screen that you can easily view from a lot of angles. So even if you want to vlog with this camera, it is great because you can flip it to see yourself or you can turn it for a high or low angle. So even if you want to get a high angle shot, it is still very comfortable to use this camera. So the ergonomics are great. But sadly, this camera doesn't support full manual control, so you can't set and the aperture and the shutter speed at the same time. You can only choose between one or the other. But you can set an exposure lock, but then you can't control either of those settings. So in terms of manual controls, it is a bit of a weird camera. But just because it doesn't have full manual control doesn't mean that the images that you can capture with this AX33 is bad. It can shoot in 4K and the images that it can capture look very sharp. Sometimes maybe a little bit too sharp actually, but you do get a lot of detail and the image quality still looks really nice. This is a quick vlogging test using the Sony FDR AX33. So right now I'm using the internal microphone, manual white balance, but the rest is all on automatic mode. So how is the image quality? How is the microphone? Is the microphone good quality? Let me know in the comments down below. And I'm using the active stabilization and I'm recording in 4K. Keep in mind, because it is a small sensor, that means that you won't get a lot of background blur. So if you are someone who likes that cinematic blurry background, you can't get it with this camcorder. But in return for not having a blurry background, you do get a very versatile built-in lens that has 10 times optical zoom. It's not the most zoom, for example the AX43 has a larger zoom, but 10 times zoom is still a lot and can cover most of the things that you are shooting. So you can get from a really nice wide angle to a very nice extreme close-up in seconds. And the zoom speed of this camera is also really fast, which means that you can easily change shots. And it actually has a much faster zoom speed compared to the Sony AX53. So that's one thing why I prefer this camera over the newer model, is that it has a much faster zoom speed. But there is no 4K at 60 FPS on this camera, but it does have 1080p at 60 FPS, which still looks really nice and has enough detail, but it's obviously not as sharp as the nice 4K image. And for slow motion you have 120 FPS on this camera in 720p, but that quality looks really bad. I don't recommend shooting in it at all. So the maximum usable frame rate in my opinion is 60 FPS. It also has a single SD card slot on the side. It doesn't have dual SD card slots, but for me that isn't an issue. It works completely fine. And you also have a headphone and microphone port that you can use, so you can easily record external audio with the microphone port or listen to it back with the headphone port. And also what's nice about camcorders compared to other cameras is that it keeps the object in focus while you are zooming, because it has a parfocal lens. And also when you zoom in and out, you don't hear the zooming noise in the recordings and you can get a very nice and slow steady zoom or a really fast one. And the smooth zoom is something that you can't get with manual lenses. The battery life of the AX53 is also really good. You can choose between large and small batteries. I like the standard battery, it can last a few hours, but if you put on a long one you can actually record for the whole day. So battery life here isn't an issue. And also the battery life will be a bit longer when you shoot in Full HD instead of 4K. But obviously 4K looks a bit better. One thing that I don't really like about this camcorder is the screen. The screen looks fine for previewing and it can go bright enough. However, the touchscreen function of it is very unresponsive. and the only way to change settings on this camera is by using the touchscreen. So it can definitely get a bit annoying, and the newer models have a better touchscreen compared to this one. It just doesn't feel that nice to use. Because it is a camcorder, it has a smaller sensor, and I already told you, you can't get a blurry background with that small sensor. But what's also a downside of a smaller sensor is the low light. So in low light the image will get a bit more noisy. It will still be about the same quality, maybe even a little bit better than your smartphone, but it's definitely not as good as a larger sensor camera. And also with the dynamic range, so the extreme highlights might sometimes be a bit overexposed. The ease of use of this camera is great. You can just flip open the screen and the camera automatically starts and turns on. So you don't even have to press the power button, you can just hit record and it will start recording, and you can get a great image looking out of it. And you don't need to put in a lot of effort to get a good image with a camcorder. What you can also see is that when I close the screen, it will automatically do the lens protection and the camera will turn off. So that is a really nice addition. I don't have to fiddle around with lens caps, which I find really annoying most of the time. But this thing has just a really nice built-in lens protection. Another really nice feature about the AX33 is the built-in stabilization. As you can see, it has a really nice gimbal stabilizer built in, but the results won't be as smooth as a gimbal. Sony says that it can replace your gimbal, but it can't. You will still get the handheld look with it. So it won't be buttery smooth, but it will be a really nice handheld look. And it's especially useful when zooming in really far, because with almost every single camera that I have used, when you zoom in really far, the image gets very shaky. But with this thing, it just keeps the image mostly stable, so you don't need to use a tripod when zooming in really far. So the stabilization mechanism works decent for walking and running, but it's not meant for that. It's really meant for when you are zooming in really far. So when you are walking and running, you will still see a handheld look. Also, if you are someone who shoots a lot of video professionally, keep in mind this camera doesn't have ND filters, it doesn't have the full manual control, and it also doesn't have picture profiles. So it's just what you see is what you get. There's no way to adjust the color in the camera except for the white balance. It does have some picture effects, but that's obviously nothing really useful. But the standard colors in camera look really nice, and the images that you can get out of this are really nice in my opinion if you are just shooting in fully automatic mode. Most cameras aren't that great in full auto, but this one is actually really great. So should you get this camera in 2025? Well, it really depends on who you are, because smartphones can also shoot really nice videos. And if you want a blurry background, then you might want to get a mirrorless camera instead of this. But if you're someone who wants a really large amount of zoom, doesn't want to adjust a lot of manual settings, and just a good image straight out of camera without putting in that much effort, then this can still be a great camera. It also has the night shot functions, but it depends on if you can get a good deal on it on the used market. But this camera, in my opinion, is still great. Also, for example, for vacations, because you can just hold this thing for hours and it still feels comfortable to use, unlike my mirrorless camera. So what do you think of the Sony AX33? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching.